Hello and welcome to the Mompreneur Life Show. I'm Lindsay McLaughlin, your host. Here we strive to inspire others to live the life of their dreams, to make the leap into entrepreneurship, and to have a winning mindset for this dynamic life. Today we have on here Amanda Bailey, and she lives down in Houston. Amanda has been in business for quite a while. And she just has an awesome story to tell. And I can't wait to hear all the details in her journey through entrepreneurship. So, Amanda, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And tell me just a little bit, just kind of summarize your story into like what you used to do, what led you to entrepreneurship, and like where you are today.
Okay, well, let's see. How far back do we want to go? So, I did not have a lifelong desire to work in senior living. It was not something that was even on my radar. It was something that was plopped in my lap, sadly, when my mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. I was at the time, I won't tell you how old I am now, but at the time I was 35 years old. And it was, we had no idea. As a family, we didn't know what we were getting into. I can still vividly remember sitting at my job. I was at the time living and working in Atlanta, and I worked in the oil and gas field, actually specifically gas and power trading. How I got here.
That's a little different than what you currently do.
It's not what I do right now. And I can remember sitting on the power trade floor and telling my coworkers, look, I'm going to be on the phone for a few minutes. I just give me a few minutes. And I worked in like a 4-foot space. So like if you're wide open trade floor. So I was sitting on the phone where the rest of my family was back in Houston at the doctor's visit where we learned that my mother had Alzheimer's. And I can still vividly remember the emotions, the words, the questions that were asked, and feeling like, okay, now what? Kind of mentality. Like, now what? Where do we go from here? And my mother progressed, and we were really blessed along the way of running into people that helped us and provided resources for us. We ended up finding a personal care home for her. So personal care homes are very near and dear to my heart because that was my first experience in senior living, was a personal care home. And it had been in business for many years, for like 30 plus years at that point. And beautifully run home where the family lived upstairs, and downstairs was the residents that they took care of. My dad was there 6 hours a day. He went over in the morning, helped her have breakfast and lunch, went home for a few hours, and came back for dinner. And they allowed it. And it was really, as bad as it was the best scenario we could come up with. And it worked. She did ultimately pass away of Alzheimer's. And about a year after she passed away, I started the Alzheimer's Walk in the town where I live, which is a suburb of Houston. And we didn't have one. So, I thought, well, we have to have one.
Yeah.
We got to have one. So, started the walk. And in the second year of the walk, and again, I still worked in oil and gas. I was not in senior living at all. But in the second year of doing the walk, there was a small 16-bed commercial assisted living memory care only facility being built in the town where I live. And we stopped in there and met the marketer she happened to be there that day. Met her and told her about the walk. And she said, oh, we would love to participate. We're not open yet here in town, but we have one on the other side of town, and we're about to have a grand opening event. Can you come? And we were like, oh yeah, we'll come. So I walked through the doors and went, oh my goodness. It was beautifully done. It was still small. It still felt like a person's home, but it was beautifully updated and done. And it just felt like home. And I was like, where was this when I was looking for it? This was fantastic. So met the owners, met the people involved, loved their mission, loved what they were trying to do. And about, I guess a couple of months later, they asked me to speak at the opening of the one that was opening where I live. So I was the speaker for the opening event. And a few months later, I got an email from the marketer that we originally met and said, "Hey, I'm moving back to Pennsylvania. My husband's been transferred. It was really nice. Good luck with y'all's walk. Y'all are doing such great work. Thank you for what you're doing." And I sat there for a minute and I went, So I sat down and I sent an email to the owner of the company and said, "Hey, I have zero experience in this industry. I've never even done a marketing role before in my life. I've never done sales. I was a analyst, a financial analyst on a gas and power trade floor. Um, but would you consider talking to me about the marketing position?" And he immediately shot an email back to me and said, "Don't do anything. I'm in Dallas for a couple of days. I'll be home and we'll talk." And a few days later, they ended up hiring me, and that started my journey in senior living. And I worked for that company for 6 years, opening, again, all small 16-bed communities. Now, Houston is a big city, and I didn't realize at the time these people did not come from senior living background. They were businessmen that had started other businesses. They just saw a model that they thought would be advantageous. Um, and they started, so I guess that's probably why they were willing to take a risk on me that had no experience either. But I didn't realize at the time, Houston is a very big city and it gets very segmented. So if you work in senior living in the marketing role, a lot of times you get into one little area. You might be in the Woodlands or inside the Loop or some other area that you don't really know the rest of the world around you in the Houston market.
Interesting.
Because, yeah, it was very interesting. But because I was working for a small company and I was the only marketer, I would open all the buildings all over town. So it allowed me to meet so many people across the city. And I loved that. I loved being able to go to a new market and really, take a grassroots approach to marketing, because anything you had done over here inside the Loop did not translate to 40 miles away in the Woodlands, because they were completely different worlds from each other. So, I got the opportunity to really teach myself almost how to do marketing, because they didn't know how, I didn't know how, and we just basically made it happen. Met some wonderful people across the city. Love the senior living market in Houston. I hear it's very different from a lot of other places. We all play very well together in the sandbox, and it was a wonderful opportunity to learn the way I did. I then stepped into operations. I went to work for a 50-bed memory care only community that was being built. And I started off doing their marketing for them. And then when the building was getting ready to open, I transitioned to the executive director. Really fit my background more, but it's hard to run a building. And I have great respect for people who are long lasting in running buildings, because it's a lot of work. And, whether it's a small, personal care home, or a group of personal care homes, or a large 120 bed, community, it's hard work. And I did step out of a building a few years ago, went back to my marketing roots, and went to hospice this time. And I love hospice. I think hospice is a gift that can be given to people at a time that can really not only provide quality of life, but it provides peace of mind for the family. And to me, that was one of the greatest experiences I've ever had, was doing marketing for hospice. But I had this idea to start a company where I would help people find long-term care facilities. I'd pretty much done it free of charge, kind of, pretty much free of charge for people for years. I'd have a friend call me and say, hey, my friend Jane's mom really needs a memory care facility. Can you help her find one? It's like, oh, of course, certainly. Tell her to give me a call. And I
Yeah.
would talk through with her the different options based on what she told me. And I didn't know at the time, I was really training myself for what I'm doing now. I was really learning how to do discovery and all the nuances of what I like to call the exceptional client experience, really giving them a real concierge approach to understanding what their needs are and matching them with the facilities that I know can really take good care of them and providing them with the goods and the bads and everything in between, and letting them make that choice. And that's the model which I built my company off of. Not necessarily inserting myself in an opinion, but providing them with all the options so they can make their own opinion and form their own opinion. Because I don't know their mother like they know their mother. When I had to do the search for my father, I kind of approached it from that same perspective. I knew all the facilities that would best fit his needs at the time. But he needed to make some of the decisions himself. So off we went on the tours together so we could take a look at that. So, it really, when I look back and look over, a 20-year career now of senior living, I kind of go, everything I've done, brings you to today. And that's the most amazing thing that when you're in the midst of doing it and you feel like you're kind of in the funk of doing it, it all kind of comes together at some point. And it's like it really does make a difference when I worked hospice. I always felt like I had a compassion and a passion for caring for seniors when I entered this industry, but really learning to listen. When I went to work in hospice, I really started to understand how to sit and listen and let people tell their story and how important that is, and why that's necessary for people to, not only in their journey, but from my perspective now is really know where they're going. I mean, somebody can say, well, my mom has memory issues and she needs a memory care facility. And but how did we get here? How did we get to this point now that mom, you learn a lot, but you have to sit and listen. So hospice taught me that. And the operations of a building, going back before hospice, operating buildings, there are things I know that I share with families all the time. They're like, I would have never known that. I would have never known if you hadn't have told me that that's how things operate. And it makes me understand better now why the choices are that are made, because people just get into the mode of, we got to do this, we got to do this, we got to do this, but they don't really explain to families that are living in the community, the loved ones that are living in the community, why it is that way.
Yeah.
But when I can sit and talk with families, sometimes they get that understanding. But again, had I not ever operated a community, that perspective would not be there. And then the marketing piece, everything I've learned in marketing, don't panic when the referrals aren't coming in. Desperation sound in your voice.
Yeah.
Things like that. Things like that I learned way back when I first entered this industry. So again, it's you get into that mode of just doing your thing. But if you're on the right path, if you know that this is where you're supposed to be, it comes together every time. And it's amazing that it does do that. But every time along the way, I've always seen it kind of come together. And now, as well as I do, operating your own company, it's got some really great highs and some really low lows. But it's the freedom of being your own voice. I'm probably harsher on myself now than I ever was as an employee for somebody else.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's okay. And I'm all right. And probably harsher on myself than anybody has ever been on me, but I can do that. But I always say, a lot of times, we were sitting around this weekend talking with some friends, and we said something about going on a camping trip. And I said, "Oh, let me check with my boss if I can get off."
Yeah.
She said, "Fine."
Yeah, that's awesome.
The freedom of that really makes a big difference. My kids are grown and out of the house, and I have grandkids, and I like to go and see them and spend time, and we do a lot of camping, so we like to be able to just go whenever we can, and I've created a model of a business where I can do it from anywhere, and that's what I wanted. I wanted that freedom. I don't see myself retiring at age 65. That's just not me. Um, so if I can continue to do this from wherever and do, travel and do what I want to do, then that's just gravy.
That's creating your life, right? Living
Creating
life
your
on your
life.
terms.
Yeah, the one you want.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's huge.
Yeah.
So you said a lot of really good things in there. One big thing let's talk about is you just said how you really learned how to listen
Yeah.
by being in hospice. That's a skill that not everybody has. Now, how
And
do
I
you
thought
think?
until I worked hospice, and then I really had to have it.
Yes. How do you think knowing how to listen or somebody really training themselves on how to listen can help them as an entrepreneur and as someone getting into their own business or being a business owner for years, really mastering that skill?
Yeah, I think if you allow yourself to listen, and that's really what it is sitting in that quiet spot and allowing yourself to listen to somebody. um, y- you learn so much more about motivations, about needs, about you know how we get so tied up into the need to respond. We feel like we have to respond, and sometimes we don't have to respond right
Mhm.
away. And I'll tell you, I mean, I've worked in senior living. I mean, when you work in senior living, you have to be patient and let people get their stories out, and all that's very important. But I mean, like, and I thought I was really good at it until I got to hospice, and then I got really, really good at it because you, it's one thing to sit, like, I mean, all kinds of stories. I remember sitting early on in my career with a gentleman who was looking at a memory care facility for his wife, and we got to the point of talking about doing the assessment, going and seeing her or bringing her into the community to do an assessment, and he just teared up. And I just sat there for a minute, and I said, "What do what's going on?" And he said, "I'm so embarrassed." And I said, "What?" And he goes, she was taking swings at me the other day, and I put my arms up to block my face, and she swung, and just by the way she hit my arm, it broke her arm.
Oh
And
my
I said,
gosh.
Boy, talk about a shocker, talk about a slap upside the head, of, you think your problems are big. No, no, they're really not. And I said,
Yeah.
"It's okay." I said, I understand." I said, "We're not here to judge you or anything like that. We want you to be able to enjoy the time you spend with your wife, and let us step into that role of being her caregiver, and you just get to come in and enjoy, or take her out for a milkshake, or whatever the case may be. We want to be that person for you, that relief for you." And I learned how to listen, and I responded and everything, but I could have sat, and in hindsight, I could have sat there a little bit more and let him just absorb what was going on, because the realization of he could no longer care for his wife was the thing that was really driving him right there. So going back to listening, it is a skill, whether you're developing it or not. Mine was a 15-year journey of developing. Don't rush yourself. I think if I had been a little bit more conscious of it, I probably could have done a better job. But
That's what I was going to ask. Do you think you were aware of that at the time? Like, were they training
no,
on that in hospice, or
not even.
was it in hindsight you were like, huh, I
Well,
actually learned how to listen?
that, that's the other thing. I don't know that I've ever worked for a company that trained anybody on sitting and listening. They teach you how to do marketing, that how to how to tour a building, all kinds of little functional things, but nobody has ever mentioned just sitting and listening
Hmm.
and why that's important. And that's a shame. I think it's, at least from in my industry, I think it's really important. But I think it's important if you're working with your employees, if you're working with your customers, if you're working with a supplier or a vendor of some kind, you know, it, and you never know when somebody's having a bad day. You know,
100%.
yeah,
I totally agree. You bring up a really good point, though, just in how it's really not taught in I mean, maybe in some industries, but for your
yeah,
employees or whatever, and how much of an impact that could really have on your bottom line, on your sales and everything else. If you're really listening to your
yeah.
customer, to your client, well, then you're gonna give them what they need as opposed to just inserting what I think you should
What you
want
think?
or
Yeah, what you
need.
think you need. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Um, yeah, what a valuable tool. And they're sure not teaching that in school, right?
No, they certainly are not.
I mean,
Sit
maybe in one way, sit there and be quiet, but
there and be quiet, but that doesn't mean they're listening.
yes, exactly, exactly. So you went then from like having a job to coming into the
Mhm,
industry you're still in and where you became an entrepreneur, but you basically worked as an employee then for a while in that industry.
mhm.
Now, again, in hindsight, what do you think was the biggest shift in your mindset from when you were working for somebody else to when you were like, I'm doing this on my own. I want to live life on my terms, and
Yeah,
then actually doing it?
yeah. So it's a very distinct moment. And it's really kind of a funny story because I was approached by a lady who wanted to interview me to be a senior care consultant for a placement company, not a national brand one, just a locally owned and operated, but she was blowing and going and wanted to, she wanted to interview me. And I interviewed and I talked with her and her husband, who they were, they started the company together, and she has a long background. I think he worked for a bank or something like that, and she um she had a background in senior living. And I heard what she was saying, and I'll get off into my mindset, which I always think has been different because I didn't come from this industry.
Mhm.
Um, but as they're explaining to me the compensation structure, and they were explaining that they were hiring 7 marketers across Houston, San Antonio. Oh, it was Houston, Austin, and Dallas. Okay, so they were really blooming. Okay, and that the base pay for everybody was the same. But then she had also, in a previous voice, told me that a lot of people she's bringing on have zero experience in the industry. It's like, okay, but
Wait a
I
minute.
have I have a lot. I was
Yeah.
like, is there, any wiggle room in any of that? Because, that doesn't seem, what I'm bringing to the table is a lot more than somebody who has zero experience. I know you feel like you can teach them marketing, which you probably can, but I have a lot of experience.
And you're like, and I
And,
know how to listen. I know how to
and
listen
listen,
now.
she didn't. Nope, nope. I mean, immediately shut me down on that one. Nope, it's the basis of cost, but of course you'll earn more in commissions and that sort of thing. And I was like, okay, all right, thank you. And it just so happened that I was sitting in my study doing a Zoom interview with this, and my husband had walked in somewhere in the middle, was quietly listening in the background and so forth. And I hung up, and he goes, "Don't you dare take that." And I said, "Oh, I have no intention of taking that." And he said, "You could do that in your sleep." And I said, "You know, you're right. I really could. How come I'm not doing this?" And he goes, I don't know why you're not doing it. So, I mean, that kind of started a journey of it took me about a month to really kind of wrap my brain around how I wanted to do it and how I wanted it to be different. Um, but that one pivotal moment in my was like, wait, I can do this. This is something that I'm very capable of doing. And on a different level story is I had a person with a similar background of mine. She didn't do marketing when she came into this industry. I'm not sure what she did. I think she was an activities director or something like that. Then she moved ultimately into an executive director role, and she'd stepped out to do hospice also. But she was living in a small town, kind of northwest of the Houston area. And I guess about the same time I was doing this, she decided to launch a placement company herself. And so I reached out to her and I said, hey, I said, I actually been thinking about doing the same thing. And she's like, yeah, I'm just sticking up here to the smaller market. And I was like, oh, that's a good idea. Good. Don't come down here. Um, so I guess she and I have kind of talked over the course of, me stepping in and doing it. I was about 3 or 4 months behind her. But because she didn't come from a marketing background, I guess it never really occurred to her how important it was to keep pushing forward. You know what I mean? You know what I mean by pushing forward? Like just always looking for that next referral, oh bless you, that next referral outlet, what kind of partnerships you can form and do, and the always moving forward kind of mentality, just the okay, got that, next, kind of thing. She didn't come from that kind of background. And so one day she called me and she said, okay, I am kind of starting to do a little bit more in the Houston market just because it's kind of cropped up. She said, but let me ask you a question. She goes, how are you handling getting contracts? Because the basis of my model is that the client, the senior looking for care of their family member, don't ever pay me a fee.
Right.
My services are completely free to them. That when they choose a place that I recommend, then the facility pays my fee. So,
right.
So I get it on the back end instead of through the customer. And she said, how are you how are you doing getting contracts? Are you doing it more proactively? Are you doing it on the fly? Like, well, sometimes it's a little bit of both. If I tried to be real proactive in getting contracts, but sometimes the need of that particular client may necessitate me going out and finding a new resource of what's the best place. And I have to do a contract right away before I can recommend them, all that good stuff. And she said, okay. She said, I'm doing pretty good. I have like 25 contracts. And I was like, okay, I have like 120. But because I always had that pushing forward mentality, I made contracts a huge piece of what I was doing. Like I'm trying to spread into a different market right now, and I refuse to do any marketing for referrals in that market until I have enough contracts that I think I can not have to scramble and find and place, because speed is important sometimes, a lot of times. Anyway, but I think it's that overall mentality I have of push forward, push forward, push forward. I have goals for myself, 10 contracts a month, 8 to 10 placements a month, things like that. I write them down. I'm real methodical about making sure my goals are, they're reasonable, but they're also a push, that keep me pushing forward on that mentality, and keeping that right at the forefront. I read a book not too long ago. It's called Atomic Habits. Have you ever heard of it?
I actually went to school with the guy who wrote it.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh.
I'm not a huge fan of the book. Don't send him this podcast. The reason I am and I'm not. I think he really, and he has some great points about making sure you're doing the little things, the details, to get you there. But I am so goal focused. Like down the road is where I really want to be focused on that down the road, because I can do the details, but the motivation and the drive is that down the road piece of it. That we want to take our RV and spend 6 weeks on the road, in the fall, so I can go see the fall color changes in New England and things like that. That's a goal.
Yeah.
What do I have to do today to make that goal happen?
Yeah.
He's 100% right about the detail pieces of it. But I have to have that big goal down the road because that's just who I am. I have to have that push and that motivation.
Well, I think it's important though for any entrepreneur because you don't have somebody telling you what that is.
No, you do
Have
not.
somebody telling you, hey, these are objectives we got to hit and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
No, like you've got to see that vision.
Yep.
You have to create that image in your mind of, hey, this is where I'm going to be, this is what I'm going to be doing, and in order to get there, I've got to follow all these other steps. I
All
can't
these
just go
little
back and
details. I have to do all these little details, and I have to do them daily, and I have to be conscious of it.
yeah.
And I don't know if you're like this, but I have a hard time not walking into my office on the weekends because I work from home, so
Yeah.
it's right. It's like let me go a couple of emails. Let me check do this. 3 or 4 hours later, I walk out.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah. I can't say I'm guilty of that right now, but with my little kids running around,
Yeah.
I gotta have like structured time
I
to
got dogs
be doing that.
demand, no kids. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, Amanda, that is awesome. Thank you so much for your time. If you were going to give like one just like 2-minute sound piece of advice for anybody thinking to be starting their own business, what would it be?
know where you want to go. What is that life you want to live? What does it look like to you? And drive every day to get yourself there.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. That is really
As a matter
good.
of fact, it's funny. I wasn't even looking at this, but I literally right in front of me is my big whiteboard of everything that I have working. And it literally is a quote from Jennifer Lopez. And it's know where you want to go and take steps in that direction every day.
Ah, there you go.
I love J-Lo. She's awesome.
Look at J-Lo. That's awesome. Well, Amanda, thank you so very much again. And are you on social media or anywhere where people can find you, or are you
Yeah.
kind of local to the Houston area?
Currently, I'm local to the Houston area. That I mean, I can't help anybody anywhere because I at least know where to go and ask the questions and get done what needs to be done. But my website is helpformyparents.com.
Okay.
And I am on LinkedIn, Amanda Denson Bailey. And Help for My Parents has a Facebook page as well. So we would love to have followers all over the country because someday we will be all over the country.
Awesome. Awesome. I love it.